It's always been the same. I stop, I look, I dream, but I don't take the step. History tells us that in times of war, many commanders have given their prisoners the task of digging huge holes and moving the dirt in sacks across the camp, then dumping that dirt out in a huge pile. Weeks of digging, moving dirt, hauling soil. And sometimes, just as the hole was dug, as the prisoners could muster some sense of accomplishment, some hint of purpose, the commander would order the prisoners to move the dirt back and fill in the hole they just dug. The epitome of meaningless work. I know I'm not in a prison camp. Right now, my life feels like that. Work, buy, impress, whatever it is that day, I'm not actually accomplishing anything. I have no purpose. I am just digging, moving dirt, making a pile of what? I stop, I look, I dream of something more. It's always been the same, but not today. Today, I take the step. Today, I become more. Today, I realize I've made myself a prisoner. Today I decide my status does not give me purpose. Today I decide to love God rather than money. Today I decide to pursue my Creator rather than success. Today I return to my Father. Everything else is meaningless.
Good morning to you. Happy graduation weekend for those that have graduates, and a lot of those aren't here this morning because I think there's an all-night party and things like that going on. And also want to thank those guys that made the men's retreat special time for those guys that went on that. I just appreciate that, and appreciate Teresa preaching the word last week, and I heard great things about that. So thanks for the whole church making everything come together. We're beginning a new series or a new book study this morning. We're going to do a summer book study on the book of Ecclesiastes. And a lot of you probably heard about Ecclesiastes. You've heard the Time magazine commercial back in the day. They borrowed from Ecclesiastes. There is a time that a song there's a time for this and a time for that, a time for this, time for that. And the Byrds actually, I think, sang that song. So rock groups have sang songs about chapters out of Ecclesiastes. Interesting enough, it's the book of the Bible that's most quoted by atheists. It's misquoted. They don't use it in context and things, but they'll quote things like eat, drink, and kind of, be merry and, grab on for today because life is meaningless and things. And so they'll grab on to things like that, and it fits right into that one sentence will fit into their naturalism or fatalism kind of perspective on it, and they'll move on from there. But it's most misunderstood book in the Bible, probably. Some will say, though, that it's a book about philosophy. And they'll say, I'm not really a philosopher, or I'm not really into philosophies. And I would kind of counter with that in that you do have a life philosophy. And your life philosophy is reflected in how you live your life, what you value, what you believe, what you hold to be true. You will act that out in life, and we call that your life philosophy. It's how you go about doing things. So you do have a life philosophy. So Ecclesiastes, what is it? It's part of 5 books in the Bible known as wisdom literature. So those who want to increase their wisdom, this is a good book for you. We want to increase our wisdom together at Fairfield. It's part of a group of books like Job. The book of Job talks about Job's affliction. These books are very personal books. They're not historical narrative. It's not this many guys went off to war and this many guys died and they conquered this much territory or this kingdom. It's very, very personal book. So Job, we hear about his affliction. Psalms, we hear many of the prayers of David where he's afflicted with different things. And he just pours out his heart before the Lord. And so a lot of you, some of your favorite books is the book of Psalms. Song of Songs, the celebration of Solomon and his wife, the romance and sexual relationship within marriage. And so it's a very personal things. And then you got Ecclesiastes is finishing out of those 5. So it seems like I missed one. Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Song of Songs, and Ecclesiastes. That's all 5 of them. Vernon McGee has said that while Proverbs shows off the conventional wisdom of Solomon, that Ecclesiastes really reveals some of Solomon's folly. That the wisdom that's revealed in Ecclesiastes is more, sort of like what Matthew Henry, a commentator, says is like a youth group kid that wants to try out anything and everything and all the foolish things that his parents told him not to do, but he feels like he needed to learn for himself to discern what is truly true for himself. So maybe some of you are like that youth group kid, and you're thinking, well, this is the book for me because Solomon gets to serve as our guinea pig, kind of trying out all of life's philosophies that we think about and struggle with or don't want to admit that we think about, but basically that the grass is greener somewhere else outside of God. And then we get to read through what is the outcome of Solomon's life as he tries out all these other things outside of God. Now, in the context of the book, we're not going to read the whole book today, but we find out at the end of the book, Solomon comes to some great conclusions, but he steps through a lot of messes getting there. And so as we go through this book study, we're going to read a little bit, and I'm going to speak a little bit and read a little bit and walk through. It's a little bit more of a shotgun effect because as you walk through a Bible study, there's a lot of topics and things that come up if you drift and sift through the text. To understand this book, it's going to be important to understand a couple key phrases, such as vanity of vanities or meaningless. There's a lot of, the word meaningless shows up more than 30 some times, and then there's another phrase that's so key, it's called life under the sun. And that happens some 38 times throughout the book of Ecclesiastes. So it's a very important little phrase called life under the sun that differentiates it from what we're going to really get to in the meat of where God is coming from. Just to illustrate, though, vanity of vanities or life is meaningless or life under the sun, what it might be is I recently, this last week, went to outdoor school with my middle daughter, Katie, and it's a public outdoor camp. Some of you went to outdoor school. They cut the program for a while. They just brought it back to Bethel this year for 5th graders, and 2 schools got to go. And so I went as a dad and had 12 boys in my cabin. It was an overflow cabin, so we got to sleep on cots for the 3 days and didn't sleep at all. Plus, I got all the incredible sounds that middle school boys can make late at night, 1 in the morning, and then need you to walk with them to the restroom in the middle of the night because it's outside. And they're not as brave as you might think middle school boys would be and things, but found that out. And but anyways, I've gone to a lot of camps. But most of the camps I've gone to were Christian camps, ministry camps for middle school, sometimes elementary school, and high school camps. And if anyone has done camps or some of our campus life staff and things, you know that from the beginning, from the start of that camp, there's purpose. You're praying for the camp to arrive when it comes. You are ready for it. You're greeting students as they get off the bus, as they're joining the camp. You pray before meals. The counselors are well instructed about how to share the gospel throughout the week in cabin times, small groups times. There's a unifying message that's preached throughout the week that's about the gospel. The counselors are trained in the gospel. There's fireside nights where there's skits and everything about the gospel. There's a purpose. And by the last night, you share the gospel and you ask for an invitation, and kids come to know Christ. They make a life-changing decision to follow Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, and the camp is just ecstatic. The camp just comes alive. If you've been to camp and you've got this mountain-high experience where you don't even want to go home, if you're a counselor there, you just maybe want to stay with the kids because God has done something incredible. There's a spirit of unity by the end of the camp where kids come together. They might be fighting early on in the week, but by the end, kids are serving one another because they've just been saturated in God's truth throughout the week. And with the counseling time, the free time, everything is this one drive about Jesus, who he is, and how much he loves you, and how much he changes lives. And that's where I'm coming from on my trip to outdoor school, the public camp. And so you could imagine just how weird it feels a little bit for every meal time. I'm just kind of waiting for the prayer time before the meal, and there's no prayer time. Many times there doesn't seem to be, a complete clear purpose. There's no unifying message that's being spoken throughout the weekdays with the kids because they're studying, the trees a little bit here and there. There's some rec time and things, but there's some fighting that we have to break up, but we just break up because they shouldn't fight. There's not like a moral kind of thing always behind it. And there is even, it kind of even threw me off more because of how special fireside night is for me at youth camps. They did have fireside night. And they did sing songs, and you guys know the kind of songs or the hymns you sing and remember back to camp how special they were. Well, it got to fireside camp, and I was just in the midst of singing these songs with the kids where I thought, this feels meaningless. This is definitely a picture of life under the sun as I was thinking about this book study. Here's one of the songs. Here's the official outdoor school songbook. Alice the camel has 5 humps. Alice the camel has 5 humps. Alice the camel has 5 humps, 5 humps. So go, Alice, go. Alice the camel has 4 humps. Alice the camel has 4 humps. Alice the camel has 4 humps. So go, Alice, go. Alice the camel has, you kind of see, yeah, good. Some of you are quick. You're getting right after that. And there's other great songs in here, like the ants go marching 2 by 2, hurrah, hurrah. The ants go marching 2 by 2, hurrah, hurrah. There's down by the bay where the watermelons grow, where the bottoms grow. Back to my home, I dare not go, for if I do, my mother will say, did you ever see something down by the bay? Did you ever see a goose kissing a moose? Did you ever see a whale with a polka dotted tail? Just really fun stuff. But just different for a guy maybe that's been to youth camps that are something different than just under the sun. For me, that experience was just the epitome of, wow, there's really different things going on in life. And if I went to outdoor school and I would just struggle with, what in the world is this all about? And that's really exactly where Solomon goes to. Solomon is the author of Ecclesiastes, and we're going to get into there in chapter 1. It begins, we're going to go through verse 1 all the way to verse 18 as we do this Bible study together. Solomon begins, the words of the teacher. Words of the teacher, and it means either gatherer or searcher. Some of your translations may say preacher, but that would be not really completely accurate. The words of the teacher, or seeker, or gatherer, son of David, king in Jerusalem. This is exactly who the author is. He's Solomon, the son of King David, famous, the golden years of Jerusalem, king. Solomon says, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labors in which they toil under the sun? I told the shepherds this morning in our shepherds meeting, I said, I think, I'm going through the book of Ecclesiastes for the summer, and Kevin Salinas, one of our shepherds, goes, oh, that's such a meaningless book. Why do we have to go through that? That's great. He's smarter than he looks. He knows just exactly what the book's about, because Solomon says life is full of emptiness. It's meaningless. He says it several times for you to get the point. Like he's looking around and everything. He says, what is our labor under the sun? What is all this toil? What does it amount to? Why? Why are we doing it? Why are we going about this? It's meaningless. My Life Application Bible, there's a child who breaks open a chocolate Easter bunny and for a bite, and he bites into it, and at first it's just sweet for a little bit, but he notices it's hollow inside. And the sweetness kind of wears off a little bit, but the hollowness is there all through it. And Solomon is saying there's some hollowness, there's some emptiness in life. And while there's maybe some sweetness for a while or for a time or a season, strangely enough, things begin to feel empty in life under the sun, or bitterly empty in life under the sun. Verse 4 says, generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. The sun blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. You can hear how bothered Solomon is in writing this. He's bothered. One thing he's bothered is that it seems to be that the earth is the thing that lasts. The planet, the ground, the earth that has no thinking, no brilliance in it, nothing about it. It's the thing that just keeps on going, that's just ongoing. The mountains and the rivers, and there's these natural cycles. Nature is there. And mankind, for all our brilliance and self-awareness and knowledge, passes rather rapidly from one group to the next, one generation to the next. And the only way that we get some continuity, the only way we get to stay here is from birth. We keep birthing new generations. It's one reason I think Hollywood tries to, do different movies and things about either a fountain of youth for people to gain immortality, or they do things, one of my movies, Captain America, I like, where they actually just freeze the guy so that he can be preserved. Because, you think of our best thinkers or our best leaders, if we could freeze them throughout history and preserve them for our future because they were some of our best thought tanks and things that we had. Well, that's what they do with Captain America, so he's able to go be a hero in future generations and keep the world together and things from all the knowledge that he's taken with him and the powers that he has. But in reality, that doesn't really happen. The planet goes on, and the course of nature goes on. In fact, Vernon McGee is rather impressed with Solomon and his understanding of scientific patterns at this time, like the jet streams, the wind patterns. He describes in detail the evaporation cycle, as he says why the rivers flow into the sea, but they never fill up. Well, because he understood they evaporate in the clouds and come over the mountains and dropped in the rivers, and the rivers flow back out. And he just looks at this whole thing and says it just is ongoing. And man just goes through and cycles through. We don't even get a last like the planet, like the ground, like the dirt. He says in verse 8, all things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. Some of you this morning, you got up and you read the daily paper, much like I do. I read about 3 different papers in the morning, watch the news. So you read the paper this morning, you brushed your teeth, you put on clothes, you came to work. Your average day, you do those same things, only you go to work. After you're eating your bowl of cereal, things, you work till noon, you go out to lunch, maybe you go by yourself, maybe you go with some friends, and then, you go home from work, maybe on your way home from work, you work out for a few hours, but most likely not. And then from there, you go home, you watch TV for a couple hours, and then you put the kids to bed, have them brush their teeth, and then you go to bed, you get up twice to pee in the middle of the night, and you set your alarm for what? To go one more time the next day. I paid the bills last month, and here they are again this month. Pulled weeds last week. Need to pull them again this week. Mowed the lawn 4 days ago. Needs to be mowed again. Washed the car. It needs to be washed again. We ate dinner last night. We need to eat dinner again tonight. Even annual or periodic events start running together. Last year's auction, last Christmas, remember when we did this? And last Father's Day we did this, and it was so special. But you're thinking, what Father's Day was that? Because all the years just run together like days after you've been here for a while. Solomon at least highlights that there's a good part of this, of us, and that we love new experiences. You ever meet the 94-year-old who just say, I still want to go to New York because I haven't seen Niagara Falls. I just want my eyes to take that in. He says, at least in life that the human spirit is, you like to look for new experiences, and some because we don't want to admit just how similar all our lives are in the routines and the humdrum of just what the daily activity is, even as we watch nature doing the same thing. But at least we like to fill our eyes with new experiences or new things. I think it's why I like backpacking so much. It's around every bend There's some breathtaking new sights to take in. My friend Jim Wright, who died just about 5 years ago now, he said on his deathbed to me, "Darn, I would have liked to go on one more backpacking trip with you." And Jim was in his 70s, was one that went around the whole circumference of the 54 miles around the Three Sisters in a pair of tennis shoes that had holes in the bottom of them by the end. He would take in every new sight, and then he had a story to go with it. There were times us guys on the trip were close to having our fill of hearing. We tried to listen to the amount of stories he had to share. Actually, the Bible refers to love, to hearing something new, is whether how we like juicy gossip or new statistics or interesting facts or searches on the internet, or why so many people still like soap operas to fill their itching ears with all the latest stuff going on. I think it's probably more like us alpha guys who in our heart will say, "I'm going to do something that hasn't been done before. I'm going to break out of the mold. James Bond and I are like this. And I'm going to climb the highest building. I'm going to climb new heights. I'm going to do things that haven't been done before. And I'm just going to break open the societal mold of everything that people are just going in one parade after another. I'm going to sit above and outside that." And you'll see different people in society and culture, and as they try and do that, they become a crowd amongst themselves. So many guys that think just like that, and their midlife often come to some despair or disappointment because all the things they dreamed their life would be like and how it would go and how it's actually going, there's such a discrepancy, there's such a gap. And how exciting and how incredible and the adventure, the 18-year-old boy that's grown up now in their 40s, and they're just looking like, wow, this is not what I thought life would be. I thought I would be the one to conquer the mountain. And the Word of God, if you take this book correctly, and you take it in the spirit in which it's written, we can take a lot from it. We can learn a lot from the wisdom of this. We can look at the way that Solomon approached this, because he says in verse 9, what has been will be again. And what has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can say, look, this is something new? It was here already, long ago. It was here before our time. No one remembers the former generations. Even those yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. Nothing new under the sun. What has been done will be again. I mean, you ladies probably know this better than anybody in the realm of fashion. You think, you better keep that set of heels, you better keep that blouse, better keep that skirt, because in 20 years, get it out of the closet, it's coming back around. Or that big, fat, thick tie that guys had some years ago, and they go, no one will ever wear those again, that's just a fad and things, and here it comes again. You're like, whoa, save it, because it's coming back around. Kelly, my wife and school teacher, will say, if you don't like certain new models in education, don't bother complaining, because it'll get changed to something else about the time everybody just starts getting it. And so whether it's Common Core, or whether it's the latest math ideas, or the latest reading ideas, and even with the church, we repackage ways of doing things in the church all the time. Same gospel preached, but we keep on repackaging a cycle of methods in which to share it. Sometimes you get real frustrated, don't you? One of your favorite snacks has found out to be bad for you. So, hey, take heart. Just wait a while. A study is coming that will say it's actually the one health food that you can't live without. Hold in there. Hold on. We're all frustrated about political candidates offered to us. One article I read this week said a record number of people don't like their own party candidate. Makes me wonder how in the world they've made it thus far. People have said, though, whoever gets elected this time will surely ruin our country, and we're going to move to Canada. There was a great deal of people, as I was looking at historical records, there was a great deal of people in their day that said our country would be finished if Abraham Lincoln got elected. What will be again. There's nothing new under the sun. God will bless and judge countries. Christian leaders in this country will most definitely right now say our country needs a revival. I'm right there with them. We have too many superficial Christians, they'll say, who don't really know their Bible or their God, who in spoiled fashion still drink milk rather than the meat of God's Word. We're like, yeah, that's America today. You know, Jonathan Edwards in 1741 said those exact same words. A revival in America before becoming president of Princeton University. Jonathan Edwards said, we have spoiled Christians who don't know the Bible or don't know their God, or spoiled and still drink milk rather than the meat of God's Word. Is there anything which one can say, Solomon says, look, this is something new. It was here already long ago. It was here before our time. That's interesting to know. You wouldn't know it was before your time if it was before your time. You wouldn't know it. And so he's bringing some wisdom to us that we just not be aware of. As someone has said, that the more things change, the more things stay the same. You know, there's been things that are built that are part of the wonders of the world because they were built before modern technology, something like the Egyptian pyramids. Like, how in the world did they lift that? Heavy up stones. There's no way without modern technology they could put that all up there and place that just perfectly. And how in the world do they do those things? And there's some Mayan temples down in South America, in hot places, that have ventilation systems just in the way it's designed that will rival any modern day air conditioning system. The way the winds come through the sides and ventilate it and go through different the caves and wind through, and the time that gets to the place, the rooms where people can reside, it's cool. How'd they do it? There's formations of stones out in flatlands that create types of writing from them that can only be made out from being above, where they've been spotted by airplanes or helicopters, that seem to give evidence, some that mankind was able to fly or get above them to see their work. There's evidence from ancient times that there might have been know-how, doing incredible things before computers or modern-day technology were around. You imagine a nuclear holocaust? Whole countries are blown up, and someone finds an old TV that only the wires are the only thing showing. And everyone who knew how to build a TV is dead. Now, I don't know how to build a TV. I don't know the slightest thing of how to put together a TV. You imagine all the know-how that is just gone, and there's maybe a gap between the next TV ever existing for a time. The technology is not there. The know-how is not there. It's gone and died. And someday, someone runs out and says, man, years down the road, they find this machine, or they put together this machine with a picture in it and sound coming from this box, and it just seems incredible. Someone would say, it's a new thing. I was like, it's not new. It's been invented a time before. But we wouldn't know. And then Solomon says, no one remembers the former generation, and even those to come will not be remembered. Anyone remember any great-great-great-grandfathers? You know, I know my dad. I know my dad's dad a little bit, although I didn't get to know him. I know at least his name. But I certainly don't know my dad's dad's dad. I don't even know him by name. Never been talked about in our family. Anyone know your great-great-great-granddad, grandma? No. Dead and gone, not even remembered. You don't even know their name. Same thing will happen to us. I've been rooting on the Warriors, the Golden State Warriors, and following Stephen Curry ever since I heard he's an outspoken Christian man, and he's been the first unanimous league MVP, and he helped his team win with a win-loss record that was said to be never be able to be beat after the Jordan Chicago Bulls. And he's caught a lot of flack from past star players about his abilities and about what he can really do and how good this team really is. And Curry was asked what he thought about this. And he said, I've become pretty good these past couple of years learning to ignore lots of people. We imagine those guys where some of this flack has come from is guys whose identity was wrapped up in an ability that they had that's under the sun. And their basketball accomplishments, they're struggling to feel like they're still relevant by what they used to do. And not many people are talking about them anymore. And pretty soon, nobody will be talking about them. And so they're kind of like giving these last gasps of critique on the players of the day in order to kind of be remembered or to be asked, is to be honored, to even talk about these things. With all that, with all I've said, is everybody now all cheered up? Is it good to be here? I hope I've not pushed anybody closer to the edge today with the insights from Solomon. Some of you are thinking, I thought church was supposed to be a place to feel happy, feel more significant and needed and fulfilled. And what is this book doing? Why was it even included in the canon? Why is it in the Bible? And for some of you, you maybe really like this. You know, your wife's been asking you to mow the lawn last several days, and you're thinking, well, I'm going to tell her I'm not doing it. It's just going to grow again. The wife's asking you, when are you going to get a job? You need to get back to work. And, nah, the pastor said my job's meaningless. I've sort of been feeling like that for years. I ain't working. I hope that's not what you're getting out of this, because that won't be very well for you. But these next verses surely remind you of the perspective of all this thinking is coming from, and it's so important. In verse 12, I, the teacher, was king over Israel and Jerusalem, and I applied my mind to study and to explore by wisdom all that is done under the sun. Now the words here, the meaning, when he applied my study to explore the wisdom, all that is under heaven, means that he used his 5 senses that we still have today to take in the world and study it. As science is to form a hypothesis, to test the hypothesis, to see if it works. That's what Solomon does. And so he says, I'm going to apply my ingenuity, my mind to my 5 senses, to touch, to taste, to feel, to sight, to smell. And all the wisdom and knowledge that's available under the sun is accumulated this way. And we would say in modern day it's called secularism, or it's called humanism. If you can touch it, or you can feel it, or you can see it, it's real. And anything unnatural or supernatural is not real. And we have exactly the way Solomon was approaching the world. And you have man-made philosophies. In a moment, we'll talk about the 6th sense that makes all the difference. My objective is to try and capture a whole chapter of wisdom into an idea to help you remember it. Sort of like we do in a series. When the 13th verse is, what a heavy burden God has laid on mankind. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. What is crooked cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. You know, we have more and more knowledge and technology, and most of the generations that have gone before us that we know of, but our problems are maybe worse than ever. Our selfishness seems to reveal itself as it always has. Our issues, no matter how much we try to get better, no matter how much we try and solve the issues of the day, we haven't been able to. What is crooked has not been able to be straight. And I think Solomon's talking about what he's observing about mankind's heart. Because of this, I have very low expectations for our national leaders, for our elections. You might say, well, Pastor, you're just a pessimist. I said, no, I'm a Bible reader. I believe it's true that people under the sun are crooked or broken by sin. And no matter how hard we try and fix mankind's problems, a greater wisdom is needed than the wisdom that got us into them. Solomon says in 16, I said to myself, look, I have increased in wisdom more than anyone who has ruled over Jerusalem before me. I have experienced much of wisdom and knowledge. Now, it sounds like a cocky statement, but it's really true. God had blessed Solomon in a way of leading that nation that he asked for in a special way in which he had some under-the-sun wisdom that was incredible. In fact, Queen of Sheba and other national leaders from around the world in that day would come and visit Jerusalem, this little, P-town, little tiny, Hickville place to visit, because it was where it was happening. It was where statesmen were managing things the best they were seen in the world. And so people from all over, even places as powerful as Egypt, were coming to Jerusalem to see what Solomon was doing and how he was leading for them to flourish the way they were flourishing. He was it. He was a good leader. in under the sun thinking. In verse 17 it says, then I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also of madness and folly. But I learned that this too is a chasing after the wind. For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. Now, what's he saying there? Well, he applied himself to understanding of wisdom. That means he spent some intentional, technical time with professors, with the experts of the time, with the wise people. He got together with the who's who of the nation, and they would debate and talk about and think, what is the best way of doing architecture? What is the best way of doing philosophy? What is the best way to approaching the sciences? And they found out, and they built a lot of great, cool things and had a wealth that would just put to shame Warren Buffett or Bill Gates or anybody else in this nation to this day. The wealth was so much greater at this place, at this time, comparatively with today. And he says, and so I hung out with everybody that knew. I hung out with the high class. I hung out with the people who would drive Rolls Royces next to each other and say, pardon me, do you have any Grey Poupon? I hung out at the wineries. I hung out with the places where we would talk about how good this tastes and also the highest knowledge. And it was the uppity people. And then he said, I also experimented with madness and folly. I also hung out with my redneck friends. We partied in the woods and drinking Old Milwaukee and shot our shotguns in the air and went drunk as skunks. And I found out that both is really meaningless because in the end, both of these sets of people die and rot and the worms eat their bodies, and what's it really matter? And we've seen the poor folks that say, well, you know, if I'm just with the rich folks, if I got more knowledge and was able to get myself out of the predicament or a level of life that I'm in, then my life would be so much better. I'd be wealthy. If I just had more money and more things, I would be much happier and satisfied, and life would be meaningful. And then you have these wealthy people looking at these folks with a little less and thinking, man, I would just love to simplify. I wish I was not so overextended and had so many commitments that I feel just trapped to the brim. If I could just sell all this stuff or get this stuff and go back to a more simple life, then life would have more meaning, because why do I have all this stuff and it feels so empty? And then he finishes the chapter with more wisdom. There's more sorrow. With more knowledge, there's more grief. And I say in my mind, isn't that the truth? The more I watch the news, the more I read, the more I study, the more wisdom I've gained about this world, the more sorrowful. I mean, there's times I honestly sometimes would like to return back to my 20s. Because my 20s, I don't know, I wasn't watching the news much. I was just having fun. You know, Kelly and I were married 8 years before we had kids. And we were traveling around and doing what we wanted to do. And I had 1/10 the responsibility that I have today. And, you know, ignorance is not bliss. I know that. But sometimes it feels like bliss. And then the older you get, the more responsibility and the more in tune or knowledgeable, because knowledge is supposed to be power. And so you read and you write and you study more. And it seems like the more that you watch the information coming at you, the more you're sorry about the state of humanity that we're in. And you're more disturbed about it, and the things that we see, and you're more intellectual conversations you have, and the more radio broadcasts that get filled in your mind, you think, it's terrible. And you become even sometimes angry or mad or upset, sorrowful, full of grief. I read this week in another article about this group that bothers me so much, this ISIS group, and thankfully different nations are responding to them and things after the damage they're doing, but they're killing even their own people on suspicion of spying, and so they just kill them at will. There's no trials or anything. But then what bothered me even more was there was 19 girls who refused to have sex or be the slaves of this group, and they said no. So this group burned them alive, all 19 of them. You know, there's things in my heart that says, you know, I wish I didn't know that. Now you guys know it. But you know other things because you're watching the news and you're reading the paper and you're reading the same things. And you're like, you know. And you know somehow in your mind that the best thing to do is not just to quit completely watching the news or reading the paper. There's something to being aware, but at the same time you're thinking, something's desperately broken. Life under the sun is not working. The more I read, the more I know, the more desperate I am aware of the state of mankind, and it saddens me. Now you feel the desperation, or you feel that desperation of mankind this morning. You see the shortcomings of the five senses, or the senses to deal with our fallenness. There's something short about all the things that we take in and see and the things we're able to do, and you start feeling like you're on a treadmill. You feel maybe sweaty, you're feeling burdened of it all. You feel like you're working hard, but you've noticed you're not getting anywhere. It's probably many times how you feel at your workplaces or in your families, or you're just frustrated at how the world is going, you're frustrated at how your community is going, frustrated at how education is going, you're frustrated just how about everything, the political systems are going. You're just feeling like we got all this knowledge, we're working hard. Why are we feeling like we're getting behind? Why do I feel like we're going nowhere? And I think if you look real deep, you take a look at the good things, not even intrinsically evil things in themselves, and you'll constantly find 6 things that mankind invests themselves into. 6 things. I got them written on a screen for you. They invest themselves in religion, wealth, power, pleasure, friends and family, and work. And none of these things are intrinsically evil or bad, but if you make any one of these things the ultimate thing, it will steal your life away and drive you into the ground. It will. Now you're going to test that because you're people and things, and probably some of you like Solomon, like, well, we're not going to get enough out of this book for him to be the guinea pig for us. Some of you are just like, you're back in those high school ages, like, well, mom and dad said not to do this, but I need to find out for myself. If that's you, you just follow along with Solomon here, because he looked into wealth. You know, over wealth, there's people in this country who work 14 hours a day. They accumulate wealth, spending all their energy and health building a fortune. And at the end, they're still painted up like a clown, put in a box, and laid in the ground. And everything they've accumulated is just passed on to a next generation that might be ill-prepared or prepared to deal with that kind of wealth and things. But the wealth just really didn't solve any of the issues and problems. Power, the trap of power is you think you're really something, able to make some important decisions for a while, but still your end is the same as everyone else under the sun. Solomon says nobody will remember you for long. All the great decisions running your company, all the great sales records that you broke, all the times that you ran countries or leaders that ran countries of nations, all powerful, and people are powerful even in their families and running the best things or being the best coach or whatever things, none of it's going to be remembered anyway. Some of you pour yourself into religion. You know, Jesus didn't come to start a religion. He knows that those would come and go. Religions would come and go. He knew that. People would be in the trap of thinking the certain disciplines that really make life less meaningless. Jesus came to bring the kingdom. He didn't come to bring the disciplines of the kingdom. He came to bring the kingdom. He came to bring life. He came to give us life. One good example of this is just Mormonism. If some of you know Mormonism, we call it a cult. It's a belief in things that you can work yourself up towards God. And so you'll see a group of Mormons, a lot of times they have great family values and things, and they are doing it on purpose. And they have people that are Mormons, they allow at certain levels. If you reach a certain level in Mormonism, you'll be able to go to the temple. But if you don't work hard enough, you'll never go to that temple. You can go to the local ward and things, but you won't be able to be a temple Mormon. And it's because it's all based on what you do. You know, Galatians 5:4 tells us, you who are trying to be justified by works have severed yourself from Christ. But still, there's some confusion and things in there, and it drives you into the ground. Religion will drive you into the ground every time. You know, every year in this country, you know what state in the union is number 1 in depression? State of Utah. You know, sad but true. We're an overwhelming amount of Mormons. A beautiful state. If you've been there, driven through there, beautiful, gorgeous, great snow skiing. Lots of depression. You know, I can't think of one more depressing than if I had the feeling that I had to work my way up towards God. Because I'd think, I'm finished. I'm finished. And then I'd be suffering from putting out there a delusion that I've got everything together with people. And instead of being motivated by grace and sharing grace and be able to share issues and problems with others, I wouldn't be able to share it all because I'm working, and if I don't work hard enough, I won't be able to be at this status of my own religion. That's depressing. Well, the Bible informs us that something called the fall of man, when sin first entered the world, happened years back. Sin entered the world. And you say, well, what's sin? One of the definitions I like from a German philosopher from way back defined it this: building your self-worth on anything other than God. Building your self-worth on anything other than God. See, these things that aren't even bad, like friends and family and work and some wealth and religion, a certain amount of discipline is, seems good and things. But when it becomes the ultimate thing, it'll run you into the ground. So how do we live a meaningful life? How do we live a life that's more than making things that aren't ultimate thing the ultimate thing? How do I live a life that goes beyond my five senses? Well, I think if you're ready to ask them those questions, you're ready for the answer, and you need to develop your sixth sense. You have five natural senses, but the sixth sense is faith. By faith, you're saved. By faith, you can enter into the realm of God's kingdom. For by grace, you've been saved through faith, not of yourselves, so that no one can boast. And faith allows us to go beyond what just happens under the sun. John 10:10, and Jesus said real clearly, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I've come that you may have life and have to the full, life more abundantly. He's basically saying so many of you are living and breathing, but you're not alive. You're just existing. And the thief, the enemy, is seeing that and stealing your joy, and he's killing your passion for life. And he wants to destroy your soul by getting you wrapped up into thinking this world is all there is. Only the things you see and touch and smell, that's all there is. And you can go off to outdoor school and that's all you'll learn. And you'll start noticing the inconsistencies of the secular humanists who will tell you you're made by blind chance and out of some cosmic soup, and you'll live for a brief time, and before then you'll cease to exist and become dirt again. So live your life with great dignity and respect for yourself and others as good citizens of humanity. And the common human being is asking, why? Why behave? Why do anything good? Why live my life with any kind of hope and things if there's nothing other than this? And kids and, even outdoor school that were suffering in some ways. There's some Christian teachers that were even there to ask for prayer for some of these kids that didn't want to return home because their home situation was so bad. And those kids, if they feel like their home on earth is a living hell, they may be looking forward to, let's just go die in the ground and things because it's bad enough to live here. And that might be why we have record number of suicides amongst our youngest people. Why not? If you swallowed the stuff the world has given you, why not? Unfortunately, this book continues, and I'm not going to just read from the last chapter of Ecclesiastes, but you may, after the message, each time you hear what I have to say. But Solomon does come to a conclusion that knowing and loving God and following his teachings is really the best and more meaningful thing that comes out of life. The invitation time is a time to celebrate God's truth. The gospel in which he came and died on a cross for our sins and resurrected to give us newness of life. It's greater than any philosophy the world has to give. And as we search through the different experiments Solomon does, each time we'll say, that is meaningless. Yeah, that isn't satisfying. I've tried that, even done that, and life wasn't there. So where is life? We're going to find life in the blood of Christ. There is life in the blood, as many Christians say. And what it means is there is life in knowing Jesus. Could we have the ushers come forward this morning as we celebrate this time of communion?